Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Red Donkey Projections. I'm Lucas, and we have Eric here as always.
Hey guys.
We are back after a very long time. It's been like a month, and today we'll be doing our updated Senate prediction. A lot has happened in the past 2 months. The last time I made this video was in November of 2021. So happy New Year, because this is our first video in the new year. 2 years of Red Donkey Projections. And with that being said, let's get right into it. As always, we'll run through our safe states. We obviously have the West Coast and the Northeast, majority in the Northeast. Maryland is going to be safe for now. We are seeing the possibility of Larry Hogan running here. He's the very popular governor here. However, even if he were to run, I think this race would still remain uncompetitive. At most, it would move down to a likely. Then, of course, we have the Midwest. Very rural states, and a big theme of this video, like last video, is the political environment. As we saw in the 2021 elections, things are not looking good right now for the Democrats and for President Biden. Iowa, even though Democrats are running a very good candidate in Abby Finkenhauer, unfortunately for them, Chuck Grassley is running for re-election, and honestly, Chuck Grassley kind of wins every time he runs, so that remains safe. I think that is it for the one more New York and Illinois. That should be it for all the safe states. I'm going to hand it over to Eric now to discuss Ohio.
So after a long and bad year for Joe Biden, because he's getting a lot of opposition from the Republicans and not a lot of legislation is being passed, common theme here is going to be just the face of the Biden administration and how it trickles down to like the rest of the states for the Senate, because you're going to be noticing that in terms of like party recruitment, like the Democrats especially, like if they want to win, like in terms of electability, they're recruiting a lot of like fairly winnable people. But the problem is just that the face of their party is kind of lacking at the moment. Joe Biden's approval rating is not the highest, definitely not the highest as it was compared to when he just started his term. So that's going to be a common pattern here as to why we're switching quite a few competitive states. So now, going to Ohio, we're going to probably put this at a likely. We'll kind of low likely. If likely is from 5 to 15, I would say like 5 to 6 as of now. Unless Biden really like turns around his game, then maybe he can get this down. But who's running here? So Representative Tim Ryan kind of announced his campaign around last year, I believe. And he's a representative here, and he's fairly known. But the problem with just Ohio itself is that it's swinging more and more to the right. In previous years, we've seen that in 2016 election and in 2020 election, as always. And who's running on the Republican end? We don't know who's going to win the primary just yet, but it's probably going to be Josh Mandel. He's known here in Ohio, but he'll probably turn off some moderates because like he's pretty pro-Trump. Some of his beliefs that he posted like on social media and just rhetoric kind of turned off some moderates, so he's not probably going to be able to win them. So that's probably what's going to happen with Ohio.
Yep, I agree with you completely on that, because so much of Josh Mandel's tweets on Twitter are quite far right, and I think that will definitely alienate some of the more suburban moderate voters. I'm going to head over now to the state of North Carolina. In this state, the Democrat running, who seems to be the nominee or will be the nominee, is Sherry Beasley. Her main opponent, Jeff Jackson, has already dropped out and endorsed Sherry Beasley. She's a former judge, and this is actually a really good recruit by Democrats. She actually almost won a re-election to the North Carolina Supreme Court, even though Biden lost the state by around 1.6 points, I believe. And, that shows that she's able to outrun certain candidates, even though she lost by a narrow margin. Nevertheless, given the current political environment, it's really hard for us to see a Democrat win the Senate election. On the Republican side, the Republicans running currently are former Governor Pat McCrory, who has become very unpopular for his infamous bathroom bill and lost re-election, mainly because of that bill that he passed. but also to Representatives Mark Walker and Ted Budd. Trump has given his endorsement to Ted Budd, but honestly, not much has changed in the polling data so far. And Ted Budd isn't really getting that massive boost that perhaps most people expected that he would get because of that Trump endorsement. As a result, this the Republican nominee could go to anyone, but we're leaning towards a likely R prediction right now. If Pat McCrory were to win the nomination, I think we would bring this down to lean or even tilt R if the political environment, of course, gets better for Democrats, because Pat McCrory is a very, very unpopular governor. So for now, we'll keep it as likely R, but we'll see if things change in the future. And I'll toss it over to Eric now for Florida.
So in Florida, things haven't really changed that much compared to the last time we made this prediction. It's probably still going to be a likely R for Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio here is the incumbent senator, very popular. He's approved by Latinos, which are, a huge demographic to win in Florida. And he's probably going to win over a lot of people as well right now, just given the current environment, and especially the fact that in Florida, things are probably a bit more pro-Trump nowadays, now that he lives there as well. So it's just that type of environment right now, and just clear the seeing disapproval of the current party and administration in Florida, that they'll probably all turn out to vote for the Democrats. And also, it's not really a good case for independent voters as well. Obviously, in 2020, Joe Biden was able to win a lot of them, but now they're probably either in the middle or leaning against Biden. So that's probably not going to help his party as well.
I agree completely with that, because especially in Miami-Dade, Marco Rubio is able to do very well with Hispanic voters there, and is able to carry he won't carry the county, but he's definitely able to outrun margins in that county, which will greatly help him statewide. Heading now to the state of Alaska. This one's a smaller one. Lisa Murkowski is running for re-election. In Alaska, they now have ranked choice voting. Kelly Tshibaka is currently the leading Trump candidate against Lisa Murkowski. As of now, though, we do predict that Lisa Murkowski will defeat Kelly Tshibaka in the ranked choice voting, because I think a lot of Democrats, and rather enough Democrats, are going to vote for Lisa Murkowski, perhaps as number 2 on their ballot, so that would push her to win. Heading now to the state of Colorado, which I will quickly do. Michael Bennet is here. He's running for re-election. He's a relatively popular guy, honestly a little bit unknown though, not well known, but Republicans aren't really running great candidates. I believe they're running like an Olympic swimmer. I forgot his name, but I think it's Eli something. But Eli Bremming or something like that. Eli Bremer. Unfortunately for Republicans though, Colorado swung way more to the right, way more to the left than before. We're seeing traditionally Republican towns and areas moving more and more to the left. For example, Colorado Springs has swung greatly to the left, as well as many suburban areas outside of towns like Denver, which is what we saw in the 2020 election as well, when Biden won the state by 13.5 points, which was an even greater margin than what we expected. As a result, we're going to put this one as lean instead of likely because of the political environment, but nevertheless, Michael Bennet should have no problem winning re-election. Let's head now over to New Hampshire, which is what Eric will be discussing. We have some major updates here.
So this is probably one of the biggest news ever since we've uploaded a prediction. Kristen Sununu is not running. And for anyone who didn't know, Kristen Sununu was an extremely popular Republican governor, approval rating somewhere in the 60s and 70s. So in New Hampshire, he is loved. And, given the predicament in the Senate and how it's so close, he was getting probably a lot of pressure to kind of run in the Senate and kind of to salvage it. But he made a decision not to run, and that kind of gives the Democrat a higher chance to take this. I believe her name is Maggie Hassan, right? So now Maggie Hassan probably has a better chance than she was before. She was kind of in this limbo because she didn't know if Kristen Sununu was running. They're running Chuck Morse here, who is probably the second best guy to run after Sununu, but we're probably still going to give it a lean just because of the environment. You have to have like that extra buffer zone to account for what's going on, in the executive branch.
Right. I think that Republicans had much better candidates to run here in New Hampshire. For example, they could have ran Scott Brown, the former Massachusetts senator, or they could have ran Kelly Ayotte, who's the former senator here, and Kristen, who also obviously would have been a top recruit. But Chuck Morse, he lacks name recognition, and unfortunately for him, he won't be able to overcome Maggie Hassan. Plus the fact that New Hampshire does have a blue tinge to it, even in a Republican environment. To the state of Wisconsin now. This is a seat currently held by Ron Johnson. Another update from our previous video. We finally got the news that Ron Johnson will be running for re-election. Ron Johnson's a pretty decent candidate, I would say. He was able to win in 2016, outrunning Donald Trump against Russ Feingold. It was actually a pretty strong and formerly incumbent senator. This was a state where Ron Johnson was expected to lose in 2016, but he won. Because of this and the fact that Democrats aren't necessarily running a super strong candidate, the two leading contenders right now are Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, who is a strong progressive, and Sarah Godlewski, who is the state treasurer, who has won statewide elections before. Neither of them really have great name recognition. Ron Johnson is, obviously a very far right senator, and I see a lot of memes online talking about how the two senators of Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin being super far left, and then Ron Johnson being super far right, and everyone's so confused on why this is happening. But Wisconsin is a very strange state, and because Ron Johnson is running for re-election, plus the current environment, we're going to put this one as a very low lean R. So this is like 5 points or 6 points, because we are seeing not a super strong incumbent, a super strong Democratic challenger, and we're assuming that if the environment continues to be bad as it is now for the Democrats, Ron Johnson will be able to hold on to the seat relatively easily. Let's head over now to Eric to go to Georgia.
So in the state of Georgia, Raphael Warnock is up for re-election, and you probably have heard his name before because last year there was a very close race against Kelly Loeffler and Raphael Warnock, and also with Ossoff. But Ossoff is up for re-election because he's going to finish out the previous term that he took over from, and he's going to be up for re-election. I think, though, in the state of Georgia, it's going to be a lot closer because Raphael Warnock is quite popular. I mean, obviously, as long that repeating theme, along with all of the other states, environment is changing a little, and approval of the Democratic Party is kind of sinking and not as high as it was before. So that doesn't really help Raphael Warnock, but he could pose like a pretty good fight against Herschel Walker, who is the likely Republican candidate in this race. So it's probably going to be a tilt R here.
Yeah, I want to say that, we're putting this one as tilt because as you'll see in our other predictions, this race will probably be a little bit closer compared to a state like Arizona, which I'm heading to next. But nevertheless, given the poor environment right now, it's not looking great. It's because, Raphael Warnock is a really good candidate. Herschel Walker is a pretty bad candidate. But Georgia's suburbs honestly can go either way in this election. So we're putting this one as tilt R for now, but we'll wait and see in the future to see if anything changes. And it's just a spoiler alert, but we have Arizona as tilt R. The reason for this is Mark Kelly is decently popular. He's like not super popular, but he's not super unpopular. Republicans are running Mark Brnovich, the current attorney general of the state. In 2020, Joe Biden barely won the state, and Mark Kelly also barely won his election. I believe Biden won by 0.3%. Mark Kelly won by around 2%. Mark Brnovich is probably going to be able to run a campaign where he can fight for the middle. He can discuss perhaps more about key issues, kind of like what Glenn Youngkin did. He might stray away from Donald Trump because he hasn't been very, very pro-Trump. He hasn't been like talking all the time about overturning the election results. I think he actually refuted the claims that the election was rigged or whatever. That could play well with him and suburban voters in this state, the traditionally suburban voters who were turned off by Donald Trump. if Blake Masters, who is another Republican candidate who is running, ends up winning the primary, this race would go to a toss-up because Blake Masters is super pro-Trump, and he's going to definitely turn off a lot of those traditionally Republican voters in the state who might have went for Kirsten Sinema, or rather, who might have went for John McCain in the past, but they wouldn't be willing to go for another Trump candidate. So we're putting this one as lean R. That leaves the final two states, Nevada and Pennsylvania. I'll go first to Pennsylvania, then we'll head to Eric for Nevada. So in the state of Pennsylvania, Republicans are, honestly, it's kind of a mess right now in the primary, but right now the main candidates probably are Dr. Oz, very famous for his health show, and McCormick. I believe his first name is David, but don't rely on me for that. But McCormick is, I believe, a businessman. They're probably going to be, either one of them is going to be the nominee. Dr. Oz is running a more moderate campaign, I think, compared to the other candidates. He's talked a lot about working together with with different parties and with different people. So he could be a potentially strong candidate in the general election. On the Democratic side, the two main Democrats are Connor Lamb, who is a current representative of the state. He got his claim to fame in 2018 when he completely upset Rick Saccone in the special election in a very deep red district. He's pretty well known. And also John Fetterman, the current lieutenant governor of the state, very progressive, left-wing populist candidate. Honestly, there are lots of debates online about which candidate's better. I don't want to say for sure yet. We'll probably make a separate video in the future talking about who might be the better candidate to run. But regardless, whether it's Connor Lamb or John Fetterman, we think that Republicans will still be able to carry the state given the poor environment that the Democrats are currently in. It makes it very hard for them to pick up a Senate seat. And even though this is an open seat and the Republican candidates aren't great, it's just the environment that screws Democrats over. So that's why we're putting that as lean R. And we'll head to our final state, Nevada.
So Nevada is probably going to go in a tilt D. Once again, we're providing this buffer zone amid the current environment. But what do we have here? On the Democratic side, we have incumbent Catherine Cortez-Masto, generally approved of in Nevada. She was also Attorney General at one point. On the Republican end, probably the most notable and likely to win the primary is going to be Adam Laxalt, also an Attorney General of Nevada in different years. He also ran for governor in 2018. But Nevada generally does swing to the left. It did go to Joe Biden in 2020, but Adam Laxalt is kind of known, and there is a chance that some Latinos that live in Nevada might swing to his end, which is probably going to contribute to this loss from the Democratic side. But I think as of now, things are just by themselves, despite the current environment, are subject to change just by themselves. So this is probably going to go like plus or minus a couple of points either way. But right now, it's probably going to be a close race, just given what's going on in the Joe Biden administration.
Yep, I agree with that completely. And that marks the end of this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like this episode, please like button if you like our content. Please subscribe. And we'll see you in our next episode tomorrow.
See ya.